the founder of Push Engage. We do web push notifications in 150 countries. We are doing around 6+ billion messages each month. So that's kind of who we are. But this session is about you. So I will not talk much about Push Engage right now, but I want to give you some ideas as we go through this COVID. What are some of the growth hacks or some of the methods by which you can still acquire customer, like Yash said, still be in business and continue to grow. So this is how we'll cover this. I'll try to cover maybe in 45-50 minutes, then open to Q&A. So we'll first talk about what is growth hacking, what is the framework for growth hacking, what has happened due to COVID, then what are the growth hacks that are working, and then we'll take some Q&A if there are at the end. So the first thing is, when we talk about the word growth hacking, what do we mean? It basically means that we want to grow rapidly with limited amount of marketing spend. It's also a mindset, right? It's about, okay, I have some budget, but I want to maximize it, and I really want to grow in terms of more customers. Now, remember, when we use the word growth hacking, again, it has been overloaded in several years. So I must demystify and say that true growth hacks are often short-lived, and you need to keep finding new ideas. The biggest example I must give you is, like Yash said, I was running Coupon Rani until 2015 December, and we were always looking for new channels to grow or engage our customer. And we founded Push Engage because we were able to find web push performing so well in 2015 that we built a tool. And as a result of that, we ended up, creating this company. So that's an example when we started, right? Again, but the point I will make is, as I discuss few of these, some of these will be what I'll call as best practices, but the true ones which are outperforming by 10 to 50x are really, really short-lived. Okay. Now, how do you find them? A simple rule of thumb is try contrarian thinking. So contrarian thinking means if everybody is going right, try to go left and see what happens. I'll give you an example, not valid anymore. Long back when you used to do Facebook optimization, it used to ask you, do you want to optimize for clicks? I know it still does, but that time used to say clicks or likes. And guess what? Sometimes we found that if we optimize for clicks, we were getting more likes at the cheaper price. So it's just a small example, but those things we're talking about, right? And remember, those two tactics which I want to talk about a lot today, which have elements of growth hacking, are inbound marketing and conversation marketing. And these are big words, but the whole idea is that you do not go to the customer. You create enough buzz about yourself that the customer comes to you. That's the whole idea. And it's very simple. If somebody comes on your door and wants some product or feature or service from you, like in your case, your agencies, then absolutely the chance of conversion is higher. That's actually the best kind of lead that you can get. So we'll touch a lot on that. I do realize some of you might have been through what Nivas covered in the morning session, and there is some overlap, but after I actually listened to his session and I actually changed the overlapping portion so you get new material, because I know some of the stuff that we do kind of, I mean, in inbound is kind of similar, right? But we'll try to see what new stuff we do, I guess, to build on. So I think first some COVID thoughts, because it's on our mind. Everybody is, worried about it. So the first thing I will say is that this is the right time for doing inbound because travel is restricted. You are not able to go and meet your customers. You're probably sitting in your offices making those calls, doing webinars, or doing those screen share or Zoom calls, right? So inbound has become all the more important. So the things we are going to talk about today is largely going to be very important hence. Now, having said that, we got to be very specific about when we say, okay, maybe COVID is impacted. Yes, travel has got impacted huge. Offline events have got impacted huge, but there are sectors that are doing exceptionally well. And I think you know that. And by the way, if you guys are from different parts of the world, remember in each part of the world, certain sectors may be different. So go and dig deeper. This is based on what we have seen. Gaming is doing phenomenal. E-learning is doing phenomenal, and healthcare, of course, right? I will add insurance as well. So look at those sectors is the right thing right now. You just put all your focus on people who are growing. And there are some people who I'll call, maybe I won't use the word lucky, but just because they are here at this time and they have a product that's just ripe, they're just seeing phenomenal growth and they don't know what to do with it. And you as an agency can go and cater to them. They don't know maybe how to engage or how to build, engagement model with the customer or do things with them, the customers who are using, right? Now, the other thing I will say is, which is very important, is there's a much more of a level playing field between a heavy funded or a smaller company. You may have a very large agency or a small agency. In the virtual world, you can use all the same tactics because the cost of, say, the Zoom subscription is still the same. It's of course you should have the capability to deliver, but that's the key thing, right? Again, for SaaS companies, I have said what we have seen is that on new sales activity has remained the same. This is Profitwell, who has aggregated say 17,000 companies data. They are like a payment gateway, a layer on top, and they are saying the new sales activity is the same. The churn has increased, but it also depends on the sector. So for example, if you want to cater to SaaS company, it's not a bad time at all. They're not as, it depends on what you were doing, but most of them are not suffering is what we know. The other thing I would say, for those of you who have a set of customers, I know some of you may be starting new and some of you may be just uh,
Ravi, can you
having
share
enough
your
customers.
screen?
Go,
I think
sorry,
your
go
screen
ahead.
is missing. Your
Sorry, go
screen
ahead.
is not yet shared.
Oh, screen is not shared.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry.
But your content was very engaging. That is for sure.
Okay.
I saw the screen share in the first place, but then I was like, okay, the content is really great, but let me just.
Okay, all right. That's good. Thanks. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Okay, so this is the first slide. This is a summary. I'll just repeat quickly. Growth hacking framework, then COVID, then growth hacks. This is what I was talking about. What's the growth hacking, right? True growth hacks are short-lived, contrarian thinking. Number two, COVID thoughts. Travel is restricted. Inbound marketing is the name of the game. Look at the verticals that are working. SaaS, not so badly impacted. That's the summary. Now, we are talking at this slide, which is what can you do if some of you have new customers, or some of you have existing customers. This is the right time, and I will touch on a later slide where we'll talk about how agencies actually acquire customers. But referrals is a great way. So now is the time to actually go back to your existing accounts and see if you can expand and get referrals, right? Again, remember, having empathy for the customer is really huge, for goes a long way. I have written pause in subscription, that is for my industry, but in your case, if you have a customer who's struggling, if you are empathetic at this time and give them maybe discount or pauses in certain pricing, they will be your lifetime customer. This is something I recommend strongly, right? And but again, conversions are happening, remember, even in tough industries, but your value proposition has to be very, very specific, right? Again, I have one a blog post with good summary of data and action item from Profitwell, which aggregated the data. Now, so far what we have done is we have just covered the COVID impact, some early thoughts. Now we'll get into the next part, which is what is the growth framework. Now, I can go on this stage today and tell you 20 methods, but I want to give you a framework under which you should be able to test these, so that tomorrow when you come up with this new 21st method, you are not wondering how does it fit in, right? So I'll just share a framework first, then we will get into the final part, which is a series of growth hacks which are working, right? So let's get into the framework. It's pretty straightforward. The first and foremost thing, I'm sure you've heard it many times, is identify your target market. What is the business you are in? And it should be a Twitter 140 character. Who are you marketing to? Is it targeted enough? And then we'll ask the question, where can you find? That's a separate question. But for example, if you said, hey, and this is maybe for e-commerce, not agency, but I'll say, I'm serving all young 18 to 30 years, right? That's still broad enough. You got to target more, maybe who have interest for music of type X. That's one example of targeting. In the agency, you can say, hey, I serve all sizes of customers. That's not targeted enough. What is the typical company size? Or maybe what is the specific service that you're focused on, SEO, PPC, whatever, again, or design. So those things are very important, right? Once we have this targeting, and again, you'll be surprised, so many of us don't do this exercise well, so I bring it up. Once you have that, then you got to look at, is your market large enough? The targeting that you have come up with, do not over target, in the sense, do not create like a target segment of 10 people, right? You got to have broad enough definition. Once you have that, now we are in the game to look at how to acquire those users, right? Because this will form the base. The base is, it's like the foundation of it, right? The more focused your target market, lower the cost per acquisition. And we'll do some examples so you'll be clear. Now remember, post COVID, target market identification is even more important. Focus on industries that are growing. Again, we know that. So this is the first step, identify the target market who are serving. Second is, once, I will soon share a slide which says the number 2 source of leads on your is for agencies is your website. People do look at your website to see who you are, what kind of agency, credibility, they just decipher from that, right? So you got to hone your messaging. When I say hone your messaging, you got to have messaging that speaks to your target audience. It's again very easier said than done. You'll be surprised how many folks do not do that. And I'll give you some examples of that. It's okay to ignore a set of audience. Let's say you're targeting business users versus, small or consumers, right? It's okay to have language for them and not worry about some set. But that is the key, because what's the dreaded metric, the number one metric on any page that you worry about? And I know there are a ton of what we call as a vanity metric in Google Analytics. Number one metric is bounce rate. Bounce rate is actually a measure of how many people came on your site and less than 10 seconds went away. That's a clear indication they're not engaging with your content. So go back and check your sites and see what's your bounce rate. I know your sites may get small amount of traffic, but that is very important, or maybe big traffic or huge traffic, but still bounce rate is important. A good benchmark is on a B2B site, less than 30%, 40%. If you are more than that, your messaging is not there. They're just coming in, reading and going away. Again, having this is like the foundation step 2. First, we do the target markets, stage 1 or level 1 foundation. This is level 2 foundation, right? Again, one of the other mistakes we do is we create messaging for what we think is important, not for what customers care about. If customers care about the latest SEO algorithm or stuff around that, that's what you should be mentioning if you are an SEO agency and that you are expert in it, right? We'll look at 2 landing page right away. Number 1, I picked up Freshdesk. This is an old landing page. Again, I don't want to do like a landing page analysis here, but the whole idea is this. If you look at this page, and because in the interest of time, I'll just quickly run through the key points. Otherwise, this is like a workshop I do, and we pick up each and every point. So if you go to this page, first thing you remember, I have only put what is called above the fold. What is above the fold? Without scrolling the mouse. Why is that? 80% of the people never go below the fold. So you just have to look at within the first scroll what is there. Let's look at it one by one. On the top right, you have a phone number. Phone number, pros and cons. It has a US phone number, gives credibility in the US market, strongly supported, suggested. Now you can say, hey, what if I'm a mobile recharge site? Yes, in that case, it doesn't make sense. You'll get 10 of support calls. But average ticket size more than $50 per month, it makes sense to have a phone number, because some people will not want to buy the product through filling the form. They want to talk to you. Number 1. Number 2, if you look at the center of the page, 3 words: exceptional customer support, right? Very simple to understand what this product does, right? Right below, a social proof or a testimonial. Then you got social proof by those logos. And then look at this form field. I am sure you can critique it. It probably has too many fields. I know today's version has fewer, but still it's okay. I guess that's kind of what I'll do. Now, next up, I'll put another page. The thing I'm trying to bring it, again, we have not asked the question to Freshdesk, okay, what's your target market? But if we asked, we would realize that the logos they are showing are indicative of that, right? So they are probably targeting mid-market or higher market. That's why they got Toshiba, they got Make My Trip. Again, you can have hundreds of customers. Who do you show indicates who do you want to attract, right? This is kind of the page that we have. I just put it up. I know there are many critique you can do. I think the one thing I will say is that we have put right below the free trial, for example, credit card not required, may not be relevant for you, but that's very important, we know, for companies. Then we have put this social proof in form of reviews. These are popular review sites, and we have put our rating 5 on 5 from there, and then of course the remaining stuff. That's something I want to highlight. And then we do have a video which we have kind of highlighted with this. Again, I'll just skip more into it, but the whole idea was messaging, get it right. So far, what have we done? Target market, then messaging. Now we are in the step 3 of this framework. The step 3 of the framework is, now we'll find out. Now I already know who's my target audience. I will say, where are those people where these people hang out? Let's say I am targeting CAs or chartered accountants. Maybe they are not online. Maybe they are in an industry conference. So whatever it is, we'll make a list where you find these people. Again, in a lot of our cases, they are online. So we'll make a list. We'll say, okay, these are the 10 places they will be. And then we'll go and do like an experiment and say, okay, what do I expect in terms of volume from them? And then what do I expect in terms of my ROI if I ran a campaign? Again, this is just a framework I'm putting. You can have different frameworks, but having a clear framework on how you will test your each of your experiment is very important, right? And then you're going to just keep experimenting, and you're going to, you know, see what works, right? And then you add them. The thing is, in COVID, remember, the consumption patterns have changed. Virtual events, webinars like these, huge. Educational content is also huge, right? So that's something that I would say. Now, just quickly wrapping this framework again, then we'll get into some real growth hacks. Is that we have, you know, you should be doing ongoing testing, ad channels that perform. Don't track vanity metrics. Again, 90% of the Google Analytics metrics are vanity. What do I mean by vanity? They're good for understanding, but they're not actionable. So anything that's not actionable is actually, in my opinion, a vanity metric, right? So that's something that I will say. Then remember, if you want big improvements, you be ready to make drastic changes, right? Finally, look at what's the funnel of a business. I know I'm touching on too many things. Maybe you just have a lead gen form. Maybe then this funnel is only 2 step. Maybe you have a ebook download, and then from there you convert. So what's the funnel for your, you know, lead gen process? Look at that, and then what are the benchmark, and then we improve. Again, those some tips, but that was just a high level framework. Now what we're going to do is we get into some more data, and we look at some hacks, right? So this is a interesting report I found, which I thought will be useful for everybody on this call who's an agency. What is the number one source of leads for an agency? It's referrals. 90% people said that they generate the best. And remember, even in the COVID world, they are still folks who have old customers. You can go in and ask. That is something. So again, not going too deep in it, but I can tell you, knowing the health of how your relationship with each of your accounts is very important. There are many tools which are called the customer success tools. Having those tools in place, so you are measuring, not only is your account manager aware, but even the project manager or the managing director or the managing partner is aware of what's the health of each of the account, what is the happiness level, maybe by doing NPS scores. So when you are saying, you know what, I got 25 accounts and my account managers, all of them say they're all happy, then I can look at the NPS score and say, okay, yeah, out of those only 80% are saying I have an NPS score of more than 9. Again, NPS score is like a score which is given to rate your satisfaction from your customers. And then you can only reach to them and ask for referral. Again, a referral program is a great, you know, I would call it a growth hack. Some people have it on a quarterly basis or half yearly, you know, people should do that, right? The other sources are kind of, we're going to go deeper into each of them, website, conferences, and this is what we'll cover a little bit in hacks, but we'll look at some interesting ideas. But just some slide for you. Like I said, website is the number 2. And then of course the events are. Again, this is old data. I feel events have become a lot more important right now. So just keep that in mind, right? All right. So what are the other source of information? When you start looking at maybe you have a SEO agency and you're trying to see how should I acquire more traffic to generate leads on my site, you can look at your competitors and see how are they acquiring. Look at the number 1 SEO agency in the world. I don't know, maybe it's Group M, maybe it's design agency, maybe in the niche, right? And see what are they doing. And again, SimilarWeb is a great tool, or you can of course study the site, but I love to study SimilarWeb and see, okay, this screenshot is although for a consumer side, but it clearly shows there is a lot of direct traffic, which means there is enough brand awareness happening, but there's a ton of referrals too. So they are heavy on affiliate or partnership programs. They are good in search as well. So look at SimilarWeb. It also will give you where is the traffic source for your competitors. Again, that's just the beginning of the analysis. Now we'll kind of, again, folks who are in the call, thanks for being here. Please go ahead and type in your answers, questions for whatever questions you may have for what we have covered, and then I'll try to see if I can take any questions as we are discussing this, right? And yeah, so let's kind of keep going. Um, let's get into the growth hacks, the final and the most interesting part, which I wanted to kind of talk about, right? So the first thing I was gonna, okay, so I have a question, I'll take it in a second. So I'll go through like a series of 7 to 8 growth hacks and some myths out there. Number 1 is when you start doing targeted advertising is highly encouraged. I'll tell you, targeted advertising is very predictable. One of the common myths out in some industry, and again, some folks have, is like, oh, I don't want to advertise. It's a myth. I believe if you do a targeted ad, and there are some examples I'll touch on right away. For example, your brand, right? If you see some competitor bidding on your brand, for example, you can see our brand Push Engage, and you'll see many people bid on it. And that's just, uh, if you are popular, people bid on your brand. So just have a defensive advert strategy there. Then competitor keywords. I mean, what we have found is they have very high ROI, just like anybody else is bidding. Again, there is a little bit of, some people have this debate around trademark and some question around it. Let me clarify, you know, as per Google and as per, legal, this experts, they are allowed to bid on your brand, but they can't use your name in the ad copy. So the point I'm making is, have a defensive campaign. If you see people, it depends on which industry. In some competitive industry, definitely. And then you can use competitor keywords. Just like as you're defensive, you can also be, looking at those keywords. They are very high ROI. This is my very simple 2 cents. The final one is remarketing. Remarketing is a great way to increase the efficiency of your ads. Like if you do search and you add, remarketing is basically anybody who's visited the site, you show them some banner ads. Great method, right? Again, I will also add to that, today through web push notifications, you can do the same retargeting at a much cheaper price. Although I'm not covering it much here, but for example, if I downloaded, let's say, a case study on your website, and it was for, let's say, industry oil and gas, next time I published a new case study in oil and gas, I can send them a notification. Or I know that they are actually interested in oil and gas industry, I could be sending them stuff or data around that, right? Or basically engage with them on that, right? And then of course Facebook and this, right? So this is the first one. Targeted advertising works wonders. Again, very predictable. Number two, I guess, or on this I've just gone a little deeper. If you are into AdWords, some of the few tips: quality score is key. And my simplest hack to get low CPC, and I know there are some maybe marketers who are hands-on in this call, is that ignore what Google is saying is the average CPC. If Google says it is going to be $5 on average, you should shoot for 20%. Okay, that is $1. And how do you do it? You do it by making sure you have a 10 on 10 quality score, and that means your bounce rate on the page is very low, and your click rate is very high on that copy. And you can get $1 click for somebody somewhere where you're shown $5. Again, it's a lot of work, but once you get that, you'll be amazed by the amount of clicks and conversions you can get. Again, one of my simple hacks, if you may, is ranking number one in AdWords, even in tough. Again, it's very hard. I'm telling you, it's not easy, but you got to get that level of quality of landing page and your ad copy. But if you can crack that, it's huge, because there's a ton of volume for some of those keywords, which are, depends on what you're looking for. Again, but this is kind of my quick one. And just basically just take away all low quality, like low quality score keywords. Again, sorry if I went too deep, but I just wanted to share that, right? The number two, I guess, so first ads, number two, content. Again, you hear ton around content. I know we had a lot of chats, so I'll share the few specific which I love. Number one, influencer webinars. And I have an example in the next slide as well. What's an influencer webinar? I know I got these 30 influencers who influence marketing purchase because they are marketers. For example, Push Engage sells to e-commerce companies and to marketers to marketers who are either in e-commerce companies or in media or content or SaaS or anywhere, right? Marketers, right? So you look for who's a marketer influencer, marketing influencer, and then call them on a webinar. The goal is just knowledge sharing. You're not selling anything on this webinar. Yes, there are those sales webinars. This is not that kind. It's just to help your community. You're just going to build that goodwill so that tomorrow when I say, hey, I need web push, you'll say, hey, I remember I went to their webinar. They gave me some good value, right? Think of that. That's number one. Number two, speaking in industry conference. Again, it is a little hard to get those invites, but the top conferences, if I'm an SEO guy, the top conference, on SEO, again, we know which those are. That's where I want to be. If I'm a marketing automation, there are always this top 2 or 3 conferences. Like in our industry, there is, the one in Chicago. Of course, now none of them are happening. So this is again an interesting time to identify which of the virtual conferences are huge, right? Where do you put your bet on where the virtual conference is going to be huge, right? And then and try to see if you can be on those, because that gives a lot of credibility, you know. Third, doing guest posts in industry publications. Again, all of these sound tough, but this is what the high bar for, creating an inbound is, right? If I can be, for example, we wrote a guest post in Marketo, which is a leading marketing automation company owned by Adobe. And that post, for example, is huge for us because not only as a SEO benefit and other, but it goes to all the marketers, right? So look at that, right? Then reviews, right? I think we touched in the earlier in the day, so I won't go deeper, but if there are marketplaces, in some cases there are for products, maybe for services they aren't, but if there are, like I know for some of the places there is a BBB, the Best Business Bureau in the US. So it just depends. Can you get some third party reviews on your site, so which validates that you are really good at what you are and people like you, right? Then of course we touched, I think some of the speakers touched on white papers and lead magnets, so I'll not go deeper, but they are huge, right? Finally, on the SEO part, just make sure you write fresh content regularly on your blog, avoid technical errors, and load your page faster. That's pretty simple. I just keep at that. Now, the number two thing I will say on this is just to extend on the search is, if you can get number one rank in SEO, that's a top growth hack. Why is that? If you look at this distribution, if there are 100 searches, 85% go to organic search. And out of that 85%, about 50% go to the first rank. So what does it mean? It means that around 45 or 44% of all searches are going to the first rank. So that is why the first rank is so coveted. Again, if you are a marketing agency, you know the value of this. I know it's hard, but let's say you are saying SEO agencies in Bangalore, right? To rank first on that, that's what you got to work. Again, we'll not get deeper. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer, but that's kind of the thing you got to work on. I think some of you know that, right? The second part of, I guess, the content part I was touching on was, what should I write? It's a big tough problem, right? What should I write? So we use tools like BuzzSumo to see what is the trending article on your keyword. Then we use Google Trends regularly to see what is trending, what has changed, what are people searching for. And in my industry and adjacent industries, what can I write about which is interesting to people, right? Third report I do is the Google Search Console report, which again is an underutilized tool by Google, free of cost for all webmasters, and see, are there any keywords that people are coming on my site and that I have not written good content on? And so there is a ton of stuff that goes on in thinking about what to write. And again, even if you are a full service agency or even if you are a product, of course, there's a ton that you can write. I think content is hard to crack, but once you get the hang of what to write, it's huge. That's half the problem. The second half, again, and this is just what to write from an SEO perspective. Sometimes if you are in a crowded industry, it's better to have a long tail or a mid tail, meaning not super competitive, but for example, I have used an example of how to get a visa to India, right? Again, if it's a site who's doing maybe visa processing, right? Because maybe how to get a visa is a tough keyword, but how to get a visa to India is a little longer, right? So building long queries and content around that, you'll see competition is less, and it's possible to rank on that, right? So I think just to kind of wrap this up, I think I have it. Okay, it's right here. So the second part of content is not creation. The one of the other mistakes that people do is they create a lot of content, but they don't know how to distribute it. Now, what do I mean by distribution? You spend a lot of time creating absolutely amazing white paper or a case study, but most people don't know about it. And guess what? You're not ranking in SEO. Maybe you've not done enough there. So what do you do so that that case studies goes out and reaches the right audience? And we'll talk about some of these hacks here. They are huge. In fact, in my opinion, content creation is only 40%, distribution is 60% of the work. If you can crack this, and as a process you can do a lot, right? Again, review sites we touched, but basically I'll talk about Facebook and LinkedIn groups, right? Now, what are we talking about? This is an example of a group. I have given a link from Ahref, where there is a Facebook marketing group. These are all marketers who love to hang out on these groups. There are some 9 or 10 of them. You're not going to spam them. You're not going to just publish it, right? So what do we do there? We are trying to create a profile for ourselves, a name, and how do we do that? We do it by helping people. So think of from the perspective of the other person. If I was in the group, what would I be looking for? Maybe I'm asking some question around a marketing problem I have, or whatever the segment you are in, and I just help you, right? So half the time you'll be just helping, the remaining half maybe your product fits in, and then you will answer. So the key, I guess. And so you'll have to have presence in those places, right? That's huge. And some of these targeted groups can do wonders. So similar to that, there is Reddit. Reddit has these tags, you know, that growthhackers.com, inbound, you know, product hunt for launches. Similarly, there are marketplaces, right? Again, I won't go deeper, but each of them actually deserves like a topic in itself. Like, okay, if you are a WordPress plugin user or a WordPress plugin developer, what can I do to rank higher in the WordPress plugin search? What can I do so that when people search for WordPress plugin for my categories that I rank higher, or etc., etc. There is a ton of stuff that you can look at, and that comes from distribution, right? Having said that, I'll just stop there. I know there is one question on the referral side. There is a question. Please throw some light on referral, whether it's a word of mouth referral or link sharing referral. So I think earlier slide I had a referral. So word of mouth referral will appear more as a direct in the traffic report. Link sharing kind of a referral will appear as a referral in that, is what I was trying to say. So what are these referrals? This could be partnership. You could be like saying, doing a, like, for example, we partner with Clientjoy for this summit, and maybe there are thousands of people who come and then they click and then they come to our site. So that's kind of a link kind of a partnership where, you know, your brand is getting cross promoted, right? So that's an example there. All right. So the number two, you heard of this probably, Quora. It works amazingly, I must tell you. Answer genuinely, do not spam, build trust. Again, if you look at, I mean, until few months back for web push notifications, uh, I was able to, you know, answer enough questions that I was the most viewed writer. I am no longer, I'm now number 3 or 4. But the idea I'm trying to tell you is that it's so important that we decided to spend so much time. So I go in, this is like today's thing, and I'll go and check. But how do I smartly answer? You can go and you don't need to answer all the questions, right? Answers who have fewer followers. So what is the trick there? You got to see which answers or which questions have more followers and which are likely to get most views. And there are two types of questions like that. One, which is old question, in which case there are some proxies by which you can find what are the views on those, right? And number two, among the new, just you look at the follow count and you see which has the highest follow count and you start answering, right? Again, in Quora, if you use images, answer, you know, in depth, it does rank you higher, and then over time it does build your credibility in a given niche. So you got to pick where you're answering. You can't be answering 5 or 6 niches at the same time in Quora. Now the second one is LinkedIn. Again, I know a lot of folks use LinkedIn for outbound also, although I promise I'll talk inbound. And so this is my inbound, I guess, in my opinion. What we do LinkedIn is you can do video posts. They work phenomenal. If you do great, you know, LinkedIn Navigator, again, outbound reach mechanism, you can use it. I know a lot of people use it. There is a lot of kind of best practices in that. Again, there are ways by which you can build. I'll give you a few top of my head. Don't just, you know, connect with somebody, right? If let's say you're trying to reach a CMO of a company, right? So you can reach CMO and maybe some marketing managers in that group. So don't only connect them on LinkedIn, follow them on Twitter, follow them on Facebook, right? Then see what content they're tweeting, like it, engage with it, then go and connect in LinkedIn, because they will have this brand recall. They'll say, hey, see, most of us have that thing where we, hey, who liked my tweet, right? That's still there, right? So use it for your benefit. Like, hey, who's liking my tweet, right? Okay, great. And then when you send a LinkedIn connect request, high chance of acceptance, right? So use that tactic, right? It's like you got to use multi-channel approach in that case, right? And that just always work, right? Second is, which you already know, which you have seen a lot of people say, hey, read the first comment, and you know, it increases the interaction, right? That helps the more distribution of that content. The second is you can tag people. This, of course, you guys know, but that's again a basic stuff, right? It just builds on it. That's the network effect for you. Then I've seen a lot of people started doing live streaming. We haven't tried, but I have heard some great stories. So LinkedIn, huge stuff you can, you know, do. Nowadays, it's almost like a content network plus, you know, half social and half professional, I guess is what I'll call. All right. Now, fifth one. This is from our experience. Some of it may apply to you, may not. So Powered By works amazingly for us. So if you go to a site that is powered by Push Engage in terms of, you know, push notifications, and if you're on a free plan, it'll say Powered by Push Engage, right? I have given example of Groove, which is a it's a support software, right, where you answer tickets, right? So the point I'm making is, if it's possible, and I've heard stories where there is a ERP software. The ERP software is just generating a report. In the end of the report, they mention the name of the company who generated the report or the ERP software. And that alone, for example, drove 2 to 3 large deals. So think of the client reports that you're sending. The reason is that report will go many places. In some cases, it will go outside also. So see if you can actually use your brand in some way. Again, this is not for link building. This is genuine referral building. And so that's kind of what we've seen work amazingly for us. So think of using it in some way in your site or in a product. Okay, all right. So the influencer side I touched on earlier. I'm going deeper into it. Again, finding top influencers is a huge deal. Hosting them for webinars works well. Also, you can go and appear on webinars, right? As a guest, you can go and appear on podcasts. Again, podcasts are huge nowadays. Podcasts have picked up in last 2 to 3 years in an amazing way. And there are these top niches for marketing. There are like these 5 podcasts. So you should make a target and say, okay, I am in this niche. These are the top 5 podcasts. I need to appear. How will you do? You may not be able to get cracking from day one. You got to maybe go to a tier 2 and then do a podcast, then slowly build your resume or profile in some sense for public speaking, and then you can build it up slowly. You'll get in there. That's kind of the key there. And again, we have seen, I have seen that podcasts have done good wonders. And they are like long living stuff, so maybe after a year also people may reach out, right? And then joint promotions like the one that for example, a event is being held, you do a joint promotion, right? Again, for some affiliate or partnerships works, I will skip it. But for product companies, affiliates can be huge. Or in your case, in a service company, you can have some kind of a referral even for your current customers. If they refer some person or some other company and they become your paying customer, you will give them some incentive, so they are referring more, right? So that's an example of how you can give some incentive apart from good service, where they're referring or giving you more referrals. This is an example of an influencer webinar we did. This is Craig Campbell. He's an authority in SEO, 18 years in SEO. Amazing webinars that we have had. In fact, to the extent that next week we're calling him again. So we transcribe the webinar right after the webinar. Again, one of the tips we learned a lot. And then we make it into an on-demand video after that. So there is always available for people who missed it. And then to those who want to see it, will enter the email and get the webinar. So that becomes maybe a lead magnet if they are relevant. And then we also share ongoing nuggets from this webinar on an ongoing basis, tagging him. And he's, for example, a great influencer, right? So this, again, something, and it's easy to host webinars. It doesn't cost a lot, but you got to put in the effort, right? So you got to pick maybe either a podcast that either you're hosting or a webinar, or go and appear in somebody else's. So think of some of those tactics, I guess. Finally, I guess this one, little bit of effort, but this is huge. Having a free tool as a honeypot. Like, this is Neil Patel. Everybody knows Neil Patel in marketing. He's an amazing marketer. He has this SEO analyzer, which is a free tool. You put your website address and it'll tell your website and give you, again, this is very popular in SEO industry, that they use this, and this becomes a way by which they generate leads, right? Think of what is that in your industry. Like, you will see in the finance industry, there are retirement planners, there are other kind of financial calculators. But think of what in your industry could be that tool, right? And how you could be helping your customer, and that becomes, I guess, a lead generation inbound method, right? So that's the number 7, I guess. And I must wrap up with some engagement ideas, because we do web push. So remember, the problem that web push or any engagement tool or channel solves is that you have visitors who come to your site, but they don't come back. Less than 20% people come back. The 80% don't come. So how do you get them to come back? You ask them for permission to send notification. And what we have seen is why web push has been doing phenomenal, and we call it an engagement hack, is we see 15 to 20%, even I haven't put 20, but we have seen up to 20% subscription rate. That means 100 people visit your site, 20 people are saying yes to it. That's because it's a single click. A lot of people don't realize, and some people say, oh, I don't say allow, but guess what? There is a set of audience that is always clicking yes to it, right? And so that's the number we see. Number 2, what we have seen is, from the click perspective, up to 10 times more click over email, right? So if you are doing an email newsletter, anything in email, you can do some of it. For example, you publish a new blog post on your website, send a notification, more people come and read it. Publish a case study, send a notification. You have a lead who didn't fill a form, send a notification, get them do that, right? That's just a only slide where I talked about our product per se, what it does, or like from a ROI perspective. But think of that, right? If you build traffic to your site, the next thing is to build engagement, right? So this is kind of one. The second one is, of course, email. Drip email marketing works wonders, right? I think you might have covered in some of the lead magnets, but the idea there is white papers. Somebody download it. If I download it, then I send something. If they open, ask for product demo. Again, you can see this journey, user journey. If I downloaded a white paper and I read the book, read the ebook, ask for product demo. If not, send them video overview. If they have not, they've seen a video. So think of this user journey where you're not selling them in day one. Slowly you're nurturing so they get into a stage where they're ready to maybe look at your product, or take a demo from you or have a discussion with you. So this again, huge, that you can do. All right, with that, I must quickly wrap this up. This is a summary of tools that I kind of refer to some extent. On competitor analysis, I didn't touch on, but you can, again, it depends if it's important to you, like which site is using which product, right? Maybe you are a person who's pitching to only Shopify e-commerce sites. Then you want to know who's on Shopify. So you can use a tool like BuiltWith or some plugins. But for a lot of competitor analysis, you can use BuiltWith, SimilarWeb, SEMrush. For advertising, there's a ton of, SpyFu, SEMrush, Google Keyword Planner, Google Search Console, Affiliates, again, I touched on Refersion as a tool. I didn't speak to it, but there are many, networks as there. For content research, BuzzSumo, Uber Suggest. And for SEO, Ahref and SEO. So these are the tools we usually refer. And then, of course, there is an offer that I must tell you, which I'm sure the Clientjoy team has already shared or will share, that we are giving for anybody who signs up for any of the web push engage, for push engage stuff, right? So just have to tell you. With that, I'll just open for questions and I will answer, some questions that are already here. So one of the kind of question that's out there is pop-up versus push message. What do you suggest? So I think the answer to that is I must clarify how does a pop-up appear and a push appear. So the pop-up, for example, let's say this is a page. When I am on the page, this pop-up will come. So what are we solving in a pop-up? You're basically saying I have a user who comes on this site and maybe he stays for 4 minutes and I want to maximize that 4 minutes. That's a pop-up message for you, right? Maybe you can have an exit intent pop-up, which means they are leaving. They must say, hey, can you give your email, right? That's a great, I've heard great stories about exit intent pop-ups. Now, that's a great thing to maximize conversion when there. But remember, the big problem is not that. It's maybe big enough, but the bigger problem is out of 100 people, only 20 people are returning back, 80 people are never coming back, right? So what do I do to those 80 people? This is where the push messaging or web push messaging helps, because now I can send a push notification to them when they are somewhere else. Maybe they're on Facebook. And as long as they're online in their browser, which we are almost always, right, we will get the message. So that's the whole idea. So pop-up, great for conversion enhancing. Exit intent is great, but push messaging, bigger reach, bigger potential because of that 80%, right? So again, I know it's probably very tiring for a lot of you. I did cover a couple of, okay, all right, let's kind of take some more questions. How can I compete with my competitors if they are too big, right? So again, a great question. I think the way to compete with a large competitor is to specialize. So for example, even the space we are in, we do only web push notifications, right? And that's a call we made. We said we'll specialize because I may have a competition where they are funded, maybe they raise $20 million. So they will be doing product at a certain pace. They may be building 3 products and it has its own sets of challenges. I will build only one. So for agency, it could be I specialize in SEO, and you will see those niches emerge so strongly in agencies that are designed. So while everybody or a lot of folks say, hey, I'm a full service agency, I usually ask when hey, what is your strength? And that kind of gives the answer. Are you actually SEO? So that you got to pick. And this is where all the work I'm talking about, conferences, you got to build that authority. Maybe if you have 2 partners, 2 founders, maybe 2, but not more than 2. It's never been the case that you have more than 2 strengths that you're known for, right? Okay, so somebody asked, what's the need of push notification when there is email marketing? Again, great question. I must use this slide to answer that question, which is what happens is the challenge with email over time has been there is a promotion tab. So email is going into promotion tab. This itself is a problem that only 15%, 20% people are opening it. By the way, this is an aggregate data on email from MailChimp, right? So people are not opening the email. And then of those who are opening, few are clicking. So if I send email to 100 people, I got only 3 people clicking and coming back. But if I looked at web push, you look at it, right? If I send to 100, 45 to 90 people are seeing it, and then up to 30 people are clicking. So right there, you have a 10x difference. Now, having said that, you're absolutely right. In some cases, it does not make sense to send a push notification. You got to think of push notification as something for real-time use case. So for example, I'm looking for this flight ticket, which is from Bangalore to Delhi, although right now nobody would, but if I am, then I want to get an alert when the price falls below X, right? Or I'm looking for this concert ticket. I want to be the first person to buy it, right? Send me an alert. So those are the use cases where it makes sense. Any real-time stuff, right? So that's kind of, I guess, the answer to that, right? Okay, so I think I have another question where, somebody asked how to get 50 customers. I guess some of the things I will just go back and just maybe share my journey. I mean, how we got our first, 10 or 50 customers. So in my mind, the easiest is once you have an agency ready or a product ready or a service ready to sell, allocate some budget for advertising because it's predictable. You have the opportunity cost value. So get some customers from there. Number two, when you have, let's say, the second set of customers will come from your close references, which is maybe people who you know on LinkedIn in your network, but do not just, I guess, spend a blast to everybody. Look at the target audience. It should be somebody who actually can use your service, right? And you can also, if it's a product, then you're also doing some kind of product interviews before launching a product. So those are your early customers. So that's two, your network, some advertising, and then slowly you'll build some referrals. But if you can, and you can start content, I would say 6 months before you launch your agency or a product, start writing content in your target industry. Slowly build a credible blog in your space, on the space that who you're selling to, and use that as a great way to get customers. So that's kind of the answer to that 50. Again, there's more to it. I guess the other thing which I would still say is some of these other tactics, whether it is industry conference, guest post. The other thing I will say, ourselves, we actually launched by having a guest post be there at one of the leading marketing blog, right? That's how we launched our products. So that's something that works well. All right. Yes. Any questions? Anything else? I guess anybody has. Okay. Thanks everybody for all the questions. I know it's been a
Sorry, we
long
have two
day.
more questions, Ravi.
Sure.
One is
Sure.
from Tapan. He's
Uh-huh.
asking, what is the difference between web push and app push notification?
Okay, great question. So again, web push and app push, the difference is web push works on all web browsers, which means it could be mobile browser or desktop browser. So the beauty of web push is you don't need an app. So one of the challenge people had was they wanted to send notification, but they didn't want to develop an app because app is expensive. It's hard, a lot of stuff to maintain, Android, iOS. So all now you do is you just have, and this is now part of what we call as a progressive web app. So PWA is the other name. Inside that you will have web push or just a plain vanilla web push. So that's kind of what a web push is, a web browser and desktop. Now think of it, yes, you will have some apps that you use which will have their own push. That's called app push, and that's totally fine. But you have only 15, 20 apps on your phone or whatever, because you're not getting so many apps, right? Because of the space other. So the other people can, you don't have to ask any other extra permission or extra download. That is the beauty. They just visit your site and they said yes, so they become your subscriber. So that's kind of the difference, I guess. So app is also very interesting and important, but the reach of web push is larger, is what I'll say, right?
I had a question, Ravi.
Sure, please.
The thing is, there is a thing which is coming up. So it has been there for last 4-5 years now. But chatbots are something which are buzzwords now.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So can agencies use chatbots in any way? Because there are Facebook chatbots and then there are messenger chatbots for different messengers. And some of the agencies are now trying to keep their messenger chatbots in their website also. So
Correct,
we
correct,
have Intercom and Freshworks and other people also who are doing those. But then
correct.
directly they are getting messages in their Facebook Messenger and then they are retargeting them. So what
Got it.
is
Yeah, so
something that you have seen? Is there a more chances of open rate in web push notifications or chatbots are something that people should be bullish on also?
So I would say chatbot is equally interesting. See, this is not like an either or. So push is more for engagement when they left the site. Now chatbot is again like an on-site thing. Remember what a user is on your site for. Maybe they're looking to get a product demo. Maybe they're trying to research. So in fact, we also use, intercoms chatbot, some automation there. So you can answer a few questions and get quickly the information, and I can connect you with somebody. It makes total sense. But the way I differentiate is the same the earlier question we had. What is on-site and what is off-site? So on-site chatbot, amazing. Off-site push notification. Okay, I see a few questions. Sorry guys, I didn't read the chat, so I'll just quickly take. First, I'll begin with the Q&A. Can we send push notification to a PWA without asking? No. So for push, you have to take permission. PWA app is a name. Progressive Web App is just the name of the technology which browsers support. And push is actually one of the important thing. The other thing in PWA is caching. So there are only two things in PWA, but you have to take permission. Okay, let me see. I saw some more questions. I'm just saying, can we get review from Fiverr? Okay, so when you talk about reviews from Fiverr, I am not a big believer of Fiverr, although there may be some good folks, and I'm sorry if there are good there, but usually if you take somebody $5 and he's giving you 5 reviews, those are not genuine reviews. I would rather get real reviews from real users because you can make that out, right? And I'm not saying wait for 1 year, maybe 1 month, give them good service and ask for reviews, right? And I mean, that just works well, right? All right, so I think chatbot, okay, Facebook Messenger chatbot, okay, I think you already asked.
Yeah.
That is true, okay, and I think the thing is that you can use for support many things you can, right? So, all right, so,
Great.
all right, some growth hacks for legal tech startups. So, I guess the thing is, the first question I'll ask whomsoever ask this is to tell me who's your target audience, right? When you say legal tech, are you selling to lawyers? Who's making the purchase? Is it the lawyer or somebody in their office, right? And then the next question would be, where do they hang out? I know, for example, for lawyers, there are these case documents that are available, that they go to these sites, they read these cases, right? Whatever the case law is. And so those places doing maybe partnership with that site, which is giving this free case law document. I mean, you can just go and maybe see if they have a database and see if they can, send you, send your product to all the lawyers, because the people who are reading those case documents are lawyers. So this is an example, just quickly I came up, it'll work. Okay, all right. So yeah, serving both B2B and B2C. Yeah, so legal customers, yeah, look for what they're consuming. Maybe they're looking for these templates for, they also, by the way, will be surprised, are looking for templates for legal documents, right? So all these sites which have templates for legal documents, go and either advertise or use it, or you can go and, do partnership with those sites. I mean, I'm blanking on the name, but if you search for legal case documents, you will see those, right? So look at that. Now, best practices for a B2B, it's a very broad question. Yeah. I guess the first thing is, from a lead gen, make sure you know who your target is, make sure the messaging on your website is right. That's what I will say. Number two, it depends on how big is your customer, meaning do you have to do case studies, what is the method, I mean, ticket size, that all will come. But I guess knowing the target audience, and then finally getting the messaging right is the first step, is what I will say for B2B. And there is probably a lot more that can happen, right? So, all right. Thanks everyone. I know it's been probably a long day, and I hope this last session was also worth it. And I'm available, like I kind of mentioned, I have shared my Twitter also. So if you like this session, please tweet, tag me, and that's my email. If you have any questions or things that you need help with, I do try to see if I can help you with marketing. I just love marketing, so I just like to speak on that, or rather help you with that. So happy to help you.
Wonderful session, Ravi. Thanks a lot for joining us today.